The 14th year of Chenghua. Chapter 63. Implicit Understanding. Tang Fan shot up, his usual pleasant and gentle smiling face suddenly became completely gloomy, scaring Deputy Zhao when he saw it. How is he dead? Wasn't he just fine last night? In spite of his anger, Tang Fan did not lose his reason and vent his rage upon the other man. Deputy Zhao settled down. Suicide, he quickly answered. He hung himself. His family is currently mourning. Pang Beihu brought people to stand watch there. Would you like to go and take a look? Of course, Tang Fan wanted to go and take a look. Neither he nor Suizhou could be bothered with breakfast anymore, immediately setting down their bowls and chopsticks to follow Deputy Zhao to the old village chief's home. In a very short while, the death of the old village chief had spread throughout the village. People thronged outside his house, packed all together, but because of the Chenghua keeping watch, no one dared risk their lives to see the excitement. They all timidly craned their necks, both fearful yet irresistibly curious. Commoners were ignorant but not stupid. When that weird crying had started up last night, most of the villagers had heard it. None of them had dared to come out and look at the time, but with the news of the old village chief's death went around come dawn, and with him having returned from the tombs raving before, they couldn't help but link the two things together, all saying that his group must have disturbed the river gods last time, thus inciting their anger. By the time Tang Fan and Suizhou hurried over, the Lu family were a sobbing mess of endless grief. Old Madame Lu had fainted, and was being looked after by womenfolk in a side room. The two sons of the family had instead been called into the receiving hall by Deputy Zhao to await Tang Fan's questioning. The two middle-aged men also had tears welling up in their eyes. Tang Fan gave them a few words of consolation, then asked, "When did you two discover that he had died?" "After you lords left last night, my father was persistently unhappy," village chief Lu answered. "He wouldn't answer no matter what we asked, just ranting where he was, so we had to help him to bed. We didn't expect that in the morning, he would be hanging from the rafters." "Your mother wasn't staying in the same room as him? Why wouldn't she know that he had hung himself?" Village chief Lu shook his head. "She wasn't. Ever since he became unwell, he would sometimes suddenly start punching and kicking in his sleep. We were forced to have him sleep alone. We didn't know that this." He tried to talk but couldn't keep his sorrow from coming out, shedding tears between words. The second elder Lu also started loudly sobbing upon seeing his older brother like this. Who could have expected that their old dad who was fine last night would become an ice-cold corpse by the morning? Such a thing would make anyone crumble. "After we left yesterday, did your father say anything else?" "No," village chief Lu said, choking up. "He was just like that, the same as ever at times, talking to himself at others. All the villagers say that since they ran into the mighty river gods that night, the gods would rain punishment. Talk like this was utter rubbish." Even after experiencing the events of last night, where his original viewpoint had been greatly subverted, Tang Fan would still never believe that any sort of god had anything to do with this. Not about to listen to village chief Lu continue with this, he told Peng Qi, who was keeping watch outside, to take the man to identify the body. He wasn't identifying his own father naturally but the corpse they had retrieved yesterday. The village wasn't big, so village chief Lu would definitely know whether someone was from there or not. If those two had been villagers, then their identities would soon be apparent. On Tang Fan and Suizhou's end, they went inside to examine Chief Liu's corpse. They were well experienced in autopsy. After inspecting the corpse for a good while, they learned that the old chief really had hung himself and had not been killed, and there was nothing suspicious about this suicide. But that was precisely what made them all the more abundantly doubtful. Others were saying that the old village chief had gone mad and rambling ever since his return, but he'd only been able to pull the wool over the eyes of ordinary folks with that. Tang Fan and Sui Zhou, people who came into contact with specialists all day long and could scrutinize down to the smallest detail, had noticed some evasiveness within the old village chief's rambling, the contents of which might not be true. They had formerly planned to come back and question him more today, determined to get the truth out of him no matter the means. And yet, by happenstance, they hadn't gotten the time to ask before he died. Were the cause of death to be suspicious, that would have made sense. But since it was suicide, that only made things ever more difficult to unravel. At that moment, Peng Qi walked in to speak to them. "Sir, Village Chief Lu said that the man isn't from their village and that he's never seen him before. I also asked a few villagers, who all said the same." Tang Fan and Sui Zhou looked at each other. The implicit understanding between them was now on a higher level. Sometimes, there was no need for words for them to know what the other was conveying. As such, right this very moment, they were thinking about the exact same thing, since those two weren't villagers, yet had crawled out of a thief's cave in the middle of the night. They had to have been grave robbers. Matching this with the previous multitudes of thieves' caves discovered by the villagers at the imperial tombs, it wasn't hard to draw one conclusion: this group that wanted to pilfer the tombs was definitely not limited to the two people they had seen last night. Just as the old village chief had said, it was because his group had been chasing down some thieves that they had encountered misfortune by the riverside. Even so, those people could no longer make any sort of waves, having very likely all died in that cave. Such a thing also indirectly indicated that down there, within eternal deep, there might truly be something hiding that was unimaginable and terrifying. Moreover, if that wailing sound was connected to the creature that killed yesterday, and there was a passage connecting eternal deep and the Luo River, then the monster was likely able to come and go from the tomb and riverbed freely. As such, it would sometimes hide beneath the water to drag villagers under and eat them, then sometimes stay in the tombs. That unlucky group of thieves had just happened to come across it, which had naturally been a trip of no return, encountering miserable deaths. However, that hypothesis had issues. If there really were creatures around, why had there not been any village rumors of river gods eating people for so many years prior? As was known, these events had not started happening until a year ago, at the earliest. Time had pushed forwards, yet this little village had always been peaceful without any sort of unusual happenings. Apart from the northern dynasty Song tombs being located here, Luo River village was no different from anywhere else. At this point, they appeared to have run into a dead end. "Act according to what we discussed last night," Tang Fan said to Sui Zhou. "Sorry to bother you." The other gave a slight nod. The two Lu brothers were standing outside, as were the villagers that had heard the news and came to see, solidly congesting the Liu's courtyard outside. Yin Yuanhua, Chen Wen, and Tian Xian were waiting at the reception hall's doorway. Upon seeing Tang Fan come out, they hurried forth. They had all stayed in the same home yesterday night, and there was absolutely no way they could claim that they hadn't heard that ghostly wailing. To be blunt, the three of them hadn't had the courage to go out and investigate, simply feigning deep sleep. Yet, when they had gotten up this morning, they had heard that Tang Fan had gone to check it out in person, while they, as the subordinates, had just kept sleeping inside. They all felt rather ashamed. Chen Wen and Tian Xian did not need to be elaborated upon. They were nervous, afraid that Tang Fan would look to blame them for this. Even Yin Yuanhua, who didn't get on with him, felt himself to be in the wrong. Fortunately, Tang Fan wasn't in the mood to bother with them, only ordering that they go with Peng Qi and the Jinyue to search the vicinity of the village and the tomb, to see if any of the bandits that had wanted to rob the grave last night had survived. With imperial ambassadors resting here, magistrate, he would never have slept easy once back in the city. As soon as day broke, he had scampered over with people, and then as soon as he heard that another incident had happened last night and seen the two incomplete corpses, he immediately went pale out of fright. Shuddering, he came up to Tang Fan to admit his own faults. It was unknown whether he was scared of losing his black hat or worried that the monster would show up and eat him. While he was still shakily apologizing to Tang Fan, Peng Qi had sent someone over to report that they had actually caught someone. He was a member of the thieves who had been on the lookout duty outside, hiding in the underbrush near the tomb. Because of last night's incident, Tang Fan's group had been entirely focused on the thief cave, which had given him the opportunity to slip away. However, he had been much too tired and hungry, so he hadn't been able to resist going to the village after his escape to steal food, and then, because the officers were randomly searching, he had been too afraid to come out, resulting in him getting cornered and caught red-handed. When Peng Qi brought the prisoner over to Tang Fan, he was about to shake himself into a sieve, repeatedly begging for mercy and saying that he had nothing to do with anything. It was said that appearances were born from the heart, a sentence that made a lot of sense in this moment. This man had a ratty look about him where even when he was sobbing for forgiveness, his expression showed so much vulgarity, it was really hard to sympathize with him. Noticing Tang Fan's slight frown, Peng Qi smacked the back of the man's head. "Who told you to cry? Answer him." "All right. All right." The man knelt on the ground and kowtowed over and over again. "Whatever you ask, this lowly one will answer." There was no need to ask anything at all, really, as the man poured everything out like beans down a bamboo tube. His name was Qian San'er. As a child, he had been abducted and trafficked, his story same as what happened in this kind of situation. Later on, he had followed his master in joining his current gang, the Yellow River Gang. Even though it sounded impressive, it was actually just a few dozens of vagrants gathered together to do some swindling. Tomb raiding was a zero-cost, high-risk, massive yield endeavor, so it naturally fell within the scope of their business. When it came to scale, the largest tombs in Henan's territory were the unsurpassed Northern Song Dynasty ones, and of those, the easiest to get into was the unsurpassed Eternal Deep of Zhaoshu. Eternal Deep being easy to get to was, as everyone knew, because of Li Tse of Northern Song recording its position and underground layout in his book down to the last detail. The unlucky Yingzong of Song Dynasty had not only been a short-lived devil of a reign that was just 3 years long, but his resting place was constantly getting dug up. He could be called the best emperor of the Song Dynasty, really. Hence, ever since Southern Song Dynasty, countless grave robbers had targeted Eternal Deep in waves, particularly during the reign of the Yuan Dynasty, where grave robbing had been legal and the court itself had sent people to excavate them. That practice had not been even minutely constrained until the great Ming Dynasty's founding, which was why the treasures of Eternal Deep had long been taken out. The one that had led Qian San'er's group in plundering the imperial tomb had been Li Kui, a minor boss of the Henan gang. Their actual aim on their expedition had been the Empress's tomb right next to Eternal Deep, as Northern Song emperors and empresses had separate burial spots. Eternal Deep had been visited countless times before, but the Empress tomb was a bit better, meaning there might have been some treasures left in it. Li Kui's idea had been to start with Eternal Deep, get a clear feel for the crypt's layout, then go for the Empress's tomb. In that way, they would have higher efficiency by not taking too many wrong turns. If they could find a strip and dig up some missed treasures in Eternal Deep that their predecessors had never discovered before, that would be even better. Thus, their group had gotten to it, first measuring the terrain near Luo River village, then using the cover of the night to sneak in. Before that point, there had already heard of the hearsay of the Lu River gods that were eating people, along with the strange wailing coming from the shores at night, but the tomb was a little distance away from the river. Qian San'er's group had been a bit fearful at the beginning, but after skulking around for a few nights and seeing that nothing was happening, they had put it out of their minds. They had not used the thief burrows made by previous robbers, but instead dug out another one. Its location had been picked out by Li Kui, as well. The man had been called a prodigy amongst thieves as he had been surprisingly literate, which meant he had read Li Tse's Song Dynasty records prior. He had done quite a lot of homework on Eternal Deep in advance. In his words, the spot chosen had been both easy to get to and guaranteed to be at a tricky angle, which no one had ever dug into before. As the boss had said as much, his followers had to act accordingly. All of them had hidden in the day to come out at night, spending a lot of time digging deeper and deeper, taking turns. Following over a month of digging, a cave leading right into the tomb had finally been made. Since Jian San'er was inexperienced and having only just joined the group, he hadn't gotten the opportunity to go in to dig for treasure and was forced to wallow in the fresh air outside as the lookout. The villagers were supposed to guard the tombs, but in the end, they were just peasants and had their own lives to live. It was impossible for them to guard the tombs every single day. On top of that, these weren't tombs of the current dynasty's emperors, so the court never sent anyone to actually guard them. These factors had allowed Jian San'er's group to avoid the villagers' attention so long as they took some extra caution, thus carrying out their own shady acts without restraint. After the hole had been dug, Li Kuei's group had chosen a date to descend into the tomb. On that night, Jian San'er's master had also gone down, while the former remained on the lookout outside by Li Kuei's order. In his hand, he had held an oil paper bundle containing fat crisp chicken that he had previously bought in the county capital during the day. Although the chicken had been cold, that hadn't stopped him from thinking it delicious, especially on that night of cold, blowing wind. Crispy chicken in one hand and a small flask in the other, he had hidden behind a stone sculpture in the bush, gazing at the moon in the sky, and found this all to not be unbearable. He still remembered that by the time he had slowly gnawed the chicken down to its bones, likely around 2 shishin had passed, after which a weird wailing sound had come from inside the cave, exactly like the one heard coming from the river before. The crying had been strange and horrifying. He had automatically started worrying for his compatriots down below, but he also hadn't dared to disobey Li Kuei's orders, so he had kept on squatting in watch up above. Bits of time had passed. He had no idea how long he had waited for, but the sound never went away and had even gotten clearer and clearer, as if something could crawl out of the cave at any time. He had stared dead at the cave. Right when he had been so nervous, his heart had been about to jump out of his mouth, someone had suddenly popped out of the cave. Yelping, his entire body had jumped out of fright and he had turned around to leave, only to hear his master's voice coming from behind him. "San'er, come lend me a hand, quick." It was then that he had realized that what had emerged was human, not ghost. Quickly collecting himself, he had run up to pull his master out. Behind the man, another person had come crawling out. Jian San'er had focused his eyes on him. It was Fat Lu, who had gone with Li Kuei before. "Master, what's going on?" Jian San'er had asked. As soon as he had hauled him up, his master fled without another word. Understanding nothing, Jian San'er had been forced to follow suit, Fat Lu behind him. The three had run in a line, doing all they could to race forth and get far away from the cave. They had nearly reached the boundary of eternal shine before they had come to a stop. Jian San'er had run nearly half of his little life away. The flask he once held had been tossed someplace unknown. The other two had been in an endless panic, fully unkempt, and only then had they told him what they had experienced below. As it was, after Li Kuei's group had descended, they had quickly reached Eternal Deep's underground palace. Just as they had expected, the two top and bottom floors of the tomb were not big and had long been pilfered clean, leaving not even a single valuable hair behind. Had there ever been any secret passages, they had all been busted open and robbed from, too. In short, it was empty as the void. Everyone had done a tour around inside, entirely disappointed, but right when they had gotten ready to leave, Li Kuei had uncovered a further hidden passage near the entrance they had originally dug out. It connected to a lower level of the crypt, leading somewhere unknown. Having a thief's mentality that they couldn't leave empty-handed, everyone had unanimously decided to follow the passage downwards to see what they could find. The tunnel had been very winding but also not that long. Before any of them had even caught sight of their exit, they saw a glow of preciousness vaguely radiating from below and couldn't help but get excited, believing that they might have found a genuine treasure cove, picking up their pace. Once at the entrance, they had been flabbergasted by the scene before them. What had presented itself was a very big side chamber, its interior piled up with countless valuables as far as the eye could see, resembling a small ravine. There had been at least several hundred night pearls illuminating the entire chamber up to be as bright as daytime, nearly blinding their greedy eyes. They had all been overjoyed, since they had just been thinking that they were going to return with nothing, only to incidentally come across such a wonder. In that moment, they all had leapt up in succession, jumped into the treasure mountain, and stuffed their pockets to their heart's content. There had even been some that had stuffed night pearls into their mouths after they had run out of room on their person, intending to spit them back out after they left. None of them had thought harder about this at all. With so many treasures there with a ready-made passage available, why had no one else discovered it before? Why had it been waiting for them to snatch it up? Wealth moved minds. Under the influence of these immense treasures, greed had long flushed away their logic. In the middle of everyone excitedly cheering, then having to finally and reluctantly get ready to leave under Li Kuei's insistence, a nightmare had befallen them. From the incoherent image his master and Fat Lu had painted, Qian San'er had only gotten a general idea. It sounded like their noise had drawn some kind of creature, the frightening likes of which they had never seen before. It was unknown where the monster had been lured out of, but as soon as it came in, it had bitten the upper half and head of one of their comrades clean off. That comrade hadn't had the time to even struggle or scream, his body instantly turned into two halves, one half had become the monster's meal in its stomach, and the other lower half had spurted out blood, then collapsed onto the treasure hoard. Everyone had been scared stupid by the scene, with many too slow to react, immediately getting torn to shreds. Qian San'er's master and Fat Lu had been closest to the secret passage, so they had reacted quick enough to turn tail and bolt without another word, disregarding the howling coming from behind them, cramming into the tunnel and desperately fleeing from that place. After escaping, they had then noticed that no one else had gotten out aside from them. Qian San'er had listened to their full story in fear, then requested that they flee from there without delay. However, after the other two had returned to their senses, they had been a bit indignant because the valuables they had stuffed into their pockets had all fallen out in the process of them running away without a care for anything else. Just one thought about those countless treasures had made them rub their hands together. Upon their return, the shadow of their ordeal had gradually faded. After calculating things for a long time, Fat Lu and Qian San'er's master had eventually decided to go down again. For one, they had been reluctant to part with that huge amount of treasure. If they could have brought out even a single night pearl, that probably would have been enough for them to eat and drink however much they wanted. So long as their thoughts had gone to all those riches getting possibly seized by someone else in the future, their regret had been enough to overshadow their fear of death. Another, Li Kuei and the rest of the group had all been lost inside, so them alone escaping would have been unexplainable once they came back. The Yellow River gang might have even thought that they had gotten rotten ideas due to wealth and killed the others in order to take the treasure for themselves. A jump into the Yellow River itself wouldn't have washed them clean, then. Due to these, they had wanted to go back down and bring stuff back up, so that they would have something to show for and support their explanation to the gang. Qian San'er had never heard of that much treasure before. Even though he had also gotten greedy for it, he had still been terrified from the bottom of his heart about how Li Kuei and the other would never be coming back out again, and tried persuading the other two not to go. However, he hadn't gotten the final say and ultimately got left behind on the surface as a lookout. Both of the other two had felt that as long as they were a bit more careful and fled as soon as they found danger, they probably wouldn't lose their lives. In the interest of safety though, they had brought 2 extra daggers. Unable to convince them, Qian San'er had had no choice but to stay on the top ground. Reality had proven that whenever someone held the hope of luck in their hearts, there would be a 90% chance that they would meet with doom. The very same 2 that Tang Fan's group had encountered last night had been Fat Lu and the former master of Qian San'er. After this entire sequence of events was relayed, it all became much clearer. Tang Fan's guess hadn't been wrong. There had to be a passage linking the underground tomb and the Luo River in order for the monster to appear both in the river and down in the thief's cave. The wailing sound also had to be coming from that monster as well. As long as it was killed, everything would be good. Even so, instead of getting lighter, their moods had turned all the heavier. That was because, according to Qian San'er's narration, that underground danger was likely too difficult to describe with words. Li Kuei's group had had strength in numbers with its over a dozen people, and they had been armed even though they had been a bit inferior to the Jinyue. They had definitely not been pushovers, and yet they all met their doom, just like that. End chapter. The 14th year of Chenghua. Chapter 64. Good job, boss. What exactly did the monster look like? Did your master get a good look at it? Tang Fan asked Qian San'er. The other shook his head. He said that its entire body was black. It looked like a big python, though it was much bigger than a snake and had legs. It stood even taller than us. Both of its eyes were red, which was terrifying. They had only glanced at it before running away. If they had taken any more time, they would have stayed down there. Was it an alligator? What's an alligator? Pretend I never asked. Even though they had been able to flee like that once, there wouldn't be a second time. After their first escape and new lease on life, instead of stopping there, they had been unwilling to part with the treasure inside and had entered again, the result of which had been the vain loss of their lives. Even so, they had been thieves with ill intent in their hearts. Them dying in the imperial tomb they had broken into was not an injustice. Suizhou, who had been standing quietly nearby this whole time, suddenly asked, "You're certain that the secret path your master went down is Eternal Deeps?" They said they went down below the crypt's second floor, but they didn't say whether it was part of Eternal Deep. This lowly one has no idea, Qian San'er answered timidly. The death of the old village chief was the largest point of suspicion, but Tang Fan and Suizhou had both investigated in person. He had indeed killed himself, it hadn't been done by someone else. Qian San'er had also been interrogated about it, but he was firm that his group had avoided the villagers' detection to conduct their tomb raiding, completely unaware of that elder who passed away. Whether he was lying or not didn't matter for the time being. Tang Fan ordered for him to be brought back to the city and questioned in detail by Peng Qi's hand. "Bury your father, before anything else," Tang Fan said to village chief Lu. "We're heading back to the county capital and will return in a few days. Don't fill in the thief's burrow for now, as we might still have a use for it. Also, don't let anyone get too close to the river, especially at nighttime, and no one is permitted to perform human sacrifices. This official will leave some people here to stand guard. If orders are violated, you will be the first they come to ask about it." Village Chief Lu nodded repeatedly. "This humble one will remember too." He paused, then asked, "Sir, are you planning on bringing people down that cave?" Tang Fan hedged around the question. "So, what if I am? So, what if I'm not? If you are, then please bring me with you," Village Chief Lu requested, hands clasped. "I can help show you the way." "Brother, are you mad?" the second Lu brother shouted from beside him. "Sir Tang is speaking. It's not your place to interject," Peng Qi rebuked. Tang Fan looked at Village Chief Lu with some surprise. "You know it's dangerous in there, yet you still want to go in." There were tears in the other's eyes. "I must tell you that despite me being dim, I know that that place had to have something to do with my father's death. Ever since he came out of there, it was like he was a completely different person. I want to avenge him. Sir, when this humble official first sent people down to scout the way for compensation, he was one of the few that descended." "Magistrate," he chimed in. Tang Fan raised his brows. "You've been down there before?" Village Chief Lu nodded. "I was walking with another in there for almost half a shishan. By that time, we reached the second floor of the complex, and saw that it went even further down. We walked for some time, but then felt apprehensive and too afraid to go further, so we went back up. Tang Fan made some mental calculations. Qian San'er had claimed that he had been watching outside for over 2 shishans before his master had come out. According to this statement, the time village chief Lu had taken was around the same amount to get to the 3rd floor. As such, the two's timings matched up exactly, no gaps to be seen. Your filial piety is commendable and worthy of praise, but this matter has not yet been finalized. This official still needs to consider some things. The villagers are gullible, as the village chief, you cannot incite panic in them and absolutely must not recklessly spread rumors. Yes. I will keep this in mind. Tang Fan exchanged a few more words, but right as he prepared to bring people with him to depart, someone's crisp voice was heard. Hold it. Yin Yuanhua walked over. I dare to ask, sir, but how could you allow this elder to be buried when his death is so suspicious? What is your wise opinion, Brother Yin? Tang Fan asked. This case is crystal clear, now. Obviously, the old man was in cahoots with those robbers, tacitly agreeing to them robbing the tombs here. Then, because he got found out, he made up those river gods to fool ignorant people, and now that the plan's fallen through and been exposed, he died in short order to shield his family. Yin Yuanhua pointed at the terrified village chief Lu. Maybe all the Lu family are guilty of being accomplices. They should all be arrested and taken in for strict interrogation. How can you so rashly let them off? He had followed Tang Fan and the rest all the way here, then got carriage sickness and thrown up until he was half dead, then had to stay the night in this stinky little village. A fire had long been stuffed up inside him. With how Tang Fan was dominating the overall situation and how the ever-domineering Jin Yue was willing to be ordered around by him, Yin Yuanhua inevitably refused to accept who the leader was, thinking that if things kept going like this, there would be no point in him coming along at all. Tang Fan didn't get angry upon hearing that, only asking, did you hear that strange noise last night, Brother Yin? Yin Yuanhua's face went red. I was sleeping a little deeply, so I didn't. Envoy Sui, me and the others did, so we went outside, traced it to the proximity of the imperial tombs, and saw those 2 people die violently ourselves. You saw the corpses, as well. Why do you think that anyone would silence someone by biting the lower half of their body off? The other was speechless for a moment, so Tang Fan continued. If you don't believe me, that's simple to fix. Continue to stay in the village tonight, wait until you hear the sound at midnight, then go to the riverside to look. If you have good luck, you might be able to see the river gods descending down and capture them all in one go for us to deal with later. There was a malicious grin on his face. Yin Yuanhua was so angry, his teeth itched. This humble official will be making a report to the superiors on how negligently you're handling this case, Sir Tang. Tang Fan gave a light sneer. Do as you please. That same day, the group returned to the city. With the old village chief now dead and the monsters nowhere to be seen, them hurrying back like this seemed to be a weak finish to a strong start. In reality though, Tang Fan and Sui Zhou were making 2 parts preparations simultaneously. Upon arrival at the city, Sui Zhou didn't make any extra stops, directly leading a team to the Jinyue's post in Henan to lend hand cannons from it. Meanwhile, Tang Fan returned to the post house to write out a memorandum, which listed all of what they had verified since coming here and requested further instructions from above. The 2 of them had already talked this over in private. To find out the truth, they were going to end up having to go underground, but they couldn't do so like they were now. Full preparations needed to be made. At the same exact time, Yin Yuanhua was also writing a report, but he wasn't writing it to Minister Shang, it was for his mentor, Assistant Minister Liang. Were the fight between Yin Yuanhua and Tang Fan said to have merely started from an out-of-nowhere office chief that had snatched the former's supposed position from under his nose and thus drawing the latter's ire, it had now become a way for the two backers behind them to fight amongst themselves. Minister Zhang wasn't looking forward to entering the cabinet, and Assistant Minister Liang was watching the Minister of Justice position like a hawk. How could Zhang Ying tolerate his fancy? He fully supported Tang Fan for this case, and not only that, he had helped him win the lead imperial ambassador position, as without as much, it would not have been Tang Fan's place to preside over this expedition. It was why Liang Wenhua had agreed to his disciple going with Tang Fan. It was not just to have him get some blackmail material on Tang Fan, but also a bid to prove that Minister Zhang had no clear grasp on people's abilities. As it happened, head of the cabinet Wanan had been dissatisfied with Zhang Ying as of late, feeling that the old man wasn't obedient enough and wanted to replace him with the more obedient Liang Wenhua. Tang Fan being incapable of handling this case would similarly implicate Minister Zhang. Where there were people, there was strife. Even though a case like this appeared to have nothing to do with the capital whatsoever, it was still affected by the conflicting interests of all involved in the background. Since Zhang Ying was supporting Tang Fan, he couldn't disappoint his hopes. Regardless of what was said, the old man yet had some principles and bottom lines in the way he conducted himself. Letting him be the minister was definitely better than letting Liang Wenhua have the position. At the very least, he wouldn't have to worry about his life always being made difficult for him. Tang Fan and Yin Yuanhua's memorandums were separately sent to the capital, post haste. There was no way that the capital's end would have been able to reply within 2 days, but Sui Zhou's actions were very quick, and he came back the very next day with 4 hand cannons. The instant ammunitions arrived, they were like already powerful tigers growing wings. Tang Fan didn't waste any time, directly calling the other civil officials over. I have reported the situation here to the capital, but no matter how quick this exchange goes, it'll be at least 5 days before word comes back, while things at Luo River Village cannot be delayed. Now that the Jinyue has borrowed hand cannons, I'm going to go down the cave with Jinyue envoy Sui and take a look, or perhaps even catch the man-eating monster and resolve this disaster. The danger below is immeasurable. Since you're all civil officials, you don't need to follow me in this peril. It would be better for you to remain in the post house to fulfill the role of contacts. If a message comes from the capital, help me with issuing a response without delay. Chen Wen and Tian Xian exchanged looks. They too had heard what Jian Saner and village chief Lu had said that day, so they were perfectly happy to not do anything risky, but were even the lead envoy to go down while they, the supporting roles, simply watched the excitement from the side. If something happened after that, they would inevitably be getting punished. Sir, you're the lead envoy of this assignment. You only need to be center command. Why would you brave the risk yourself? Chen Wen urged. Envoy Sui is an imperial ambassador, as well, and isn't he heading down? Tang Fan countered. Each person cherishes their own selves, so how could they all be made to come with? Seeing that Chen Wen was choking on words, Tian Xian quickly picked it up. Wouldn't it be best to wait until the court sends a message back, first? Tang Fan shook his head. He actually had other plans in mind, but there were some things that couldn't be explained to them right now. I've already made a decision. There's no need to say more. If something happens to Envoy Sui and I, you will be responsible for leading who's left back to the capital, reporting on the truth and then sending more people down. The hidden risks of this place must be completely resolved. Upon hearing how grave he was, the two were somewhat helpless, having no choice but to agree. This official is willing to come. Yin Yuanhua contrarily said. I ask for your permission, sir. Chen Wen and Tian Xian were too afraid to go down because they valued their little lives, but Yin Yuanhua had other motives. Whatever creatures there were underground, he had boundless confidence in the 4 hand cannons the Jinyue had. Besides, the Jinyue's skills were not to be compared to those of a mob of grave robbers. Deep infiltration into enemy territory was a dangerous thing, but if the treasure-filled chamber Jian Saner had spoken of could be found, that would be an immense credit. Yan Yuan, who had taken such pains to come here, how could he be willing to let Tang Fan pick the total sum of those fruits? Tang Fan creased his brow. The monster is of unknown origins and has a savage penchant for slaughter. This will be an extremely treacherous trip. It would be best for you to remain here. Yan Yuan Hua straightened out his neck. Are you worried that this humble official will snatch your credit, sir? People like this had no distinction between what was good and bad to do. If Tang Fan did actually prevent him from going down, the man would send a complaint to the higher up and affix him with the accusations of being arrogant, overly proud, dictatorial, and whatever else, which would be enough to cause him trouble. Bringing this to mind, Tang Fan was disinclined to bother with him. You want to go, so you can. There's just one rule: you need to obey orders, and are not allowed to act on your own. Under the pressure of that look in his eyes, Yan Yuan Hua had no choice but to clasp his hands. I will earnestly observe your orders. Having received the cannons and reconvened, Tang Fan and Sui Zhou didn't waste much time, leading the Jinyue straight back to the Luo River village the very next day. In spite of Magistrate He having the mind to curry favor with a higher rank, he was not as willing to go all out as Deputy Zhao, since he still cherished being alive. All he could do was place a big heap of flattery on Tang Fan to express his good faith, whilst Deputy Zhao took it upon himself to ask for Tang Fan's instructions, saying that he was willing to be on the front lines, and even bringing along 2 bailiffs recruited from the bureau, who were also decent in skill and willing to forge ahead. The villagers were quite shocked to see them come and go. Tang Fan had sent people to the thief's cave ahead of time, then brought Deputy Zhao with him to call on Village Chief Lu. By ill coincidence, Village Chief Lu wasn't present. It was the second brother Lu that came out to receive them. My older brother is out. He said that he was going to buy a good axe in the county capital so that he would have a weapon to defend himself when he goes down with you. When did he leave? Tang Fan asked. Last night. Because it was so late, he spent the night in the city and might be back in the morning. Can you prevent him from going, sir? This lowly one is willing to go with you. Deputy Zhao was displeased. Do you think we're buying vegetables? Why are you still haggling? 2 days ago, your older brother was clearly the one to request that he accompany us, as he's been there before and is familiar with it. What use would it be if you go? The second brother Lu stammered, unable to answer. Tang Fan stopped Deputy Zhao from continuing to menace him. Why do you want to come with us? Don't you know what dangers there are below? I don't want him to send himself to his death. Deputy Zhao rolled his eyes. Were Tang Fan not next to him, he would really want to give this fool a big slap in the face. What did he mean, send himself to his death? Were they all getting ready to do that, then? Tang Fan just smiled warmly. You have a strong brotherly bond, to prefer to go to a dangerous location in your brother's stead. The second brother Lu nodded. Yes. My brother has had a hard life. His wife died young, and in order for me to marry myself, he didn't marry again, with no children of his own even now. After our father's incident, he will have to both be the village chief and take care of the family. I can't just do nothing. Against expectations, however, Tang Fan asked an additional, blindsiding question. Did the old village chief discover something below that then forced him into suicide? The other had a face full of confusion. Clearly, he had no idea what he was talking about. Tang Fan and Yin Yuan, who had previously had a similar notion, where they'd been under the impression that there had to be some connection between the tomb robber and the old village chief's death, but Qian Sanner's testimony later on had negated his conjecture. Qian Sanner's group had nothing to do with the old village chief, or even the villagers. They really had just come to set up a loot point after hearing that the imperial tombs were easy to get to. That said, why had the old village chief killed himself, then? It had obviously been to cover up some sort of truth, but what exactly had he been wanting to cover up? And if it had nothing to do with Qian Sanner's group, what did it have to do with? Such was why he had just cast that question at the second brother Lu, but judging from the man's reaction, he was obviously ignorant of the inside story on his father's death. No matter how good someone was at deception, as long as they had demons in their hearts, they would always reveal some subconscious hints. And yet, this man had no evasiveness in his eyes, no pauses in his speech, nor other such things that would indicate guilt. Tang Fan smiled lightly, changing the subject. Is your brother that heartbroken over your father's death? The second brother Lu nodded. He is. I urged him not to go with you, but he wouldn't listen, saying that if there really is a monster below, he'll kill it to avenge our father. Brother, can you really not let me go in his stead? Was my prediction entirely wrong? Tang Fan thought to himself. Did the old village chief kill himself simply because he had been too terrified, genuinely? Right as he thought to speak, he saw the second brother Liu's eyes light up. Big brother is back. Village chief Lu strode over with a sharp, brand new axe in hand. He looked at Tang Fan and Deputy Zhao with befuddlement, as well as pleasant surprise. Why are you all back so soon, sir? Are we descending today? Tang Fan nodded. Everyone's ready. We're just waiting for you. Chief Lu wiped the sweat from his brow, smiling honestly. It's good that I came back early. Let's head out. The second brother Lu quickly grabbed him. Brother, let me go with you. Village Chief Lu scowled. Stop it. You have to take care of our mother. Go back, now. If I don't return and you tell the folks as much, they'll have to elect a new village chief, you know. It would have been fine for him not to say that, as doing so made the second brother Lu even more sad. Brother. The other clapped him on the shoulder. All right, cut the crap. Get a pot of stewed meat while you wait for me to come back. And add some blanched bok choy. Sniveling, the second brother Lu nodded briskly. The two brothers parted ways, with village chief Lu following Tang Fan to the imperial tomb. Sui Zhou and the Jinyue had long been waiting there. Qian San'er was present too, of course. Even though he had never gone down, as the one who had heard his master and Fat Lu's accounts, he was more familiar with the internal environment here than the rest of them were. There was no way Tang Fan would leave him on the surface. Kindness was to be given to those it should be given to, not misused on those that didn't need it. People unfamiliar with Tang Fan would believe that he was gentle in nature and easy to speak to, but the reality was that he had a standard in his heart. Whenever it came time for him to be tough, he would never hesitate in the slightest. They went out early and it was now just after the time of the dragon, 7 to 9 a.m. In light of the time it had taken Qian San'er's master to go down and come back up, a day would be sufficient, when everything was added up. If things went well, they would be able to get out by nightfall. If things went poorly, Master Tang suddenly realized that before he left the capital, he seemed to have not had the time to pass some last words on to Adong. If neither he nor Sui Zhou could return, the little girl was probably going to be orphaned again. Alas! For Adong's sake, he was going to have to do his best in the difficult task of not losing his life away. Amongst their people, Sui Zhou, Peng Qi, and the other Jinyue were the calmest. An occupation like the Jinyue where going far away was frequently required, meant that they had grown accustomed to confronting danger and unfathomable situations at any time. The only difference here was that they might not be confronting mere humans this time around. Still, with the hand cannons in their possession, even Peng Qi, who had had some doubts upon witnessing the scene from that one night, had calmed down. In the Yuan era, the cannons had received ample use on the battlefield. At the end of the Yuan era and start of Ming, they had played an essential role during the great ancestors' fight for supremacy over the realm. In the three major capital regiments, there was even the lone Godly Works battalion that specialized in firearms units. With cannons in their hands, there was nothing else to ask for, that's why the Jinyue were calm and collected. Qian San'er had never gone down before, but he did have the lessons his two predecessors had left him. Although he was now greedy for the treasures below, he liked his life more. Despite that, there was no way he could escape this, obliged to put on a face like he was attending a funeral, fearing that he would be going to keep his master company with a single second of inattention. His mood was visibly affecting Yin Yuanhua. Even though the latter had brought up coming down here of his own will, he was still a civil official, lacking in the psychological qualities of the Jinyue. Whenever he gave thought to the condition of those two corpses, his knees would automatically start to get wobbly. Tang Fan ordered Deputy Zhao and the two bailiffs stay on top ground to provide support, then glanced at Yin Yuanhua. You still have time to turn back if you have regrets. This humble official has no regrets, Yin Yuanhua insisted, gritting his teeth. Tang Fan didn't feel like persuading him further, turning to the others. Even though I'm the lead envoy of this task, on account of the unknowable circumstances below, everyone including me must obey Envoy Sui's directions. If no orders are had, no one is allowed to act without permission. This was an integration of commanding authority. The Jinyue had no dissent. On the contrary, they were quite pleased. It was only natural that they would be happier to listen to Suizhou than a directing civil official that they had never collaborated with before. Tang Fan had similarly no desire for a confusion in orders to crop up that would end with everyone's lives lost, simply passing off all authority to Suizhou. Suizhou's face was as impassive as ever. He never said much in the presence of outsiders but would still always say a little something. Upon looking at the Jinyue all watching him expectantly, he coldly spat out two words, "Move out." The crowd. Suizhou promptly walked up to the thief's cave, preparing to head down. Turning his head and noticing them all staring blankly at him, he couldn't help but show some baffled inquiry in his eyes. Only then did the men recover, hurriedly following after him. They had thought that their leader would at least give them instructions or encouragement to boost morale or something. The cave was narrow, only able to allow one person going down at a time. In light of village chief Liu's recounting of the last time they had descended to the crypt's second floor, their journey had gone without a hitch, no danger encountered at all. However, the tragic deaths of the two robber thieves were enough warning for them to move cautiously, which slowed down their pace. Village Chief Liu went on ahead. As the one responsible for leading the way, he had to be in the forefront. Suizhou and the Jinyue came after him, followed by Qian San'er, Yin Yuanhua, Tang Fan, and Pang Qi bringing up the rear. The cave path had many twists, having been windingly excavated. While going down, one could only tread with toes pointed down, body pointed up as they went step by step, supporting themselves on both sides of the surrounding soil wall. It was bright outside. When they just entered, one's line of sight would be fairly clear, but the further down they got, the dimmer the light was. Being used to the bright sensation of the outdoors, it was all the more difficult for the eyes to adapt to the dark, cramped space, which resulted in everyone walking slowly. Though the cave was narrow to start with, as it went down, it got more spacious, later turning wide enough to accommodate two people at a time. They all had to keep their bodies snug against the rock wall, so as to avoid the huge slope making their entire body slide downwards. As Tang Fan supported himself on the wall, he could tell that some areas were sticky and had a faint stink, as if a corpse had been ripped to shreds, droplets of blood and bits splattering everywhere. No. He wasn't going to keep imagining something like that. He had to look inside himself and say that even though he wasn't that much of a clean freak, thinking in detail about all that was nauseating. "It's here." Village Chief Liu's voice came from up ahead. Soon, Tang Fan was waiting for each of the people ahead of him to jump down, after which he leapt himself, immediately planting his feet firmly onto the ground. But he had forgotten that Yin Yuanhua was behind him. When Yin Yuanhua jumped down, he apparently sprained his foot, letting out a cry of pain as he tumbled right onto the unlucky devil in front of him. Master Tang, the unlucky devil, felt a sharp bout of pain on his back, unable to even get a glimpse at the scenery in front of him before he was crushed to the ground by this man. A Jinyue named Yanli was walking with Suizhou in front, surveying the environment before them when he unexpectedly saw Suizhou's figure bolt. By the time he got a good look, his boss had already thrown Yin Yuanhua to the side, making him involuntarily roll several times away like a carriage wheel, then carefully helped Sir Tang up, asking after him in a hushed voice. Even though Yin Yuanhua would never dare to offend the Jinyue, he had also never let loose enough to make friends on his own time, forever putting on the air that civil officials had. As a matter of course, Yanli and the rest of them didn't like him much. Bearing witness to this event, Yanli only had one thing he wanted to say: "Good job, boss." End chapter.